I've always wanted to turn one of our home TVs into a full retro emulation centre, with all the home computers and all the old consoles all in one place. So let me show you how I did it. Hi and welcome to Bytes and Bits. For quite a while now, I've been considering adding a computer to one of our sort of family TVs to turn it into sort of like a retro gaming, retro computing centre, but I haven't really found the right sort of device for that sort of environment. But recently then I've been reviewing a couple of these Mini PCs. So this company, Mealy, have sent me out a couple of their devices to have a bit of a play with. One of them is actually plugged into that PC on the wall behind me there, and that was their Quieter 4C device, which is a completely silent little Mini PC. And then they sent me out this one here, which is their Overclock X5. So this is a more powerful machine. It's got a 12th generation Core i5 processor sitting in there, and that gives me sort of really good emulation. So I did do a review video off this where we found that it can pretty much emulate, well, pretty much anything that you can throw at it. So right from sort of obviously our 8-bit stuff right up to sort of PlayStation 3 and some Xbox 360. So this seemed like an ideal product to put onto our home TV to turn that into sort of like a whole, sort of like my dream retro emulation center. So in this video, we're going to have a look at how we're going to set that up. I'm really going to split this project into two parts. So this first part is going to be the home computer emulation side of it. So we're going to look at setting this up, getting a nice graphical front end on there. So we're going to use something called Launchbox, and then setting up some of the actual emulators. I always find that the home computer emulators are a little bit more tricky to set up on the sort of graphical front ends to get them a nice sort of gaming center setup to it. So that's what we're going to concentrate on today. But first of all then, let's have a look at the components you're going to need to get hold of to make this project work, and then we'll have a look at setting up the software. So for this project, we're basically putting together a mini PC. So we're going to need some sort of keyboard and mouse device. This is going to be in my family room, so we don't want to have any wires dangling around. So again, I'm going to be using sort of a wireless keyboard and mouse here. There are a number of different options you can have, from this sort of full size thing, which I'm going to use because I will want to do some home computer emulation on mine, just so I can have a proper keyboard and mouse attached to it. But again, there are sort of smaller devices as well. I do also have a number of these retro computers which I did turn into keyboards. So this is an actual USB keyboard device, and that will plug then into the computer itself. So again, I will want to use some of these things. The computer itself then, as I said, is going to be this little mini PC. So these are great little devices. So this here is the Mealy Overclock X5, which is a powerful little machine, but it doesn't take up any space. You can see here it is really small, and you can see it here. This is it actually sitting in my family room beside my TV, and you can see it really just blends into nothing, sort of just sat to the side there. The device itself, if you look at the side of it here, we do have some quite large cooling areas. So this is quite well cooled, so it's not going to get massively hot, and the fans themselves are very quiet. So as I say, it's sort of like a little laptop sitting in behind your TV, and really that it really does get lost in there. You will not notice it at all, and that's one of the reasons why I've held off from sort of using a desktop style machine. Quite often I use sort of older desktops to sort of give me the sort of computing power at a reasonable cost. But this here is a much better solution. We're also going to need some sort of controller. So GameSir have always been very kind to me, and they've sent me out this one here for this project. So this is their Nova 2 Lite controller, which is a lovely little unit. I do actually like it in the white here as well, with the sort of orange highlights. So this again is a good quality one. They do make very good game controllers. I'm very pleased with the ones they've sent me out. This has got the full Hall effect sensors on all of the analog device, on all of the analog controls there, which gives really good response, and of course that's going to negate any sort of drift effects. These do not wear out. There are no actual moving parts in the sensor side of the device, so it won't wear out that way. And good quality buttons and so on. So that is a good controller there. And again, this one is wireless. This one here, it can connect over Bluetooth, but I'm going to be using it using its little dongle. So that actually gives it full Xbox controller compatibility. So it will be seen as an Xbox controller, which just makes it a bit easier when it's plugged into various emulators for them to recognize it and handle it without too much extra setup. So that really is all the bits we need for this. So we've got some sort of keyboard device, gaming device, and of course our little mini PC. So let's have a look at the actual software then that we're going to need to get this set up. So both the retro computer side of it and the retro console side are both going to be using a range of emulators so that we can actually then emulate all of the different systems. Now, we can, of course, just install those separately and launch them as normal applications, but it's much easier if we can sort of put it all inside to one graphical front end. And I'm going to be using a retro gaming front end for this project. So the one I'm going to be using is Launchbox, really because it's my personal favorite, but also for, as we're going to see in a second, when setting up our DOS PC emulation, the way I'm going to be doing that really does link in with Launchbox and makes things a whole lot easier. Now, obviously, there are things like Batocera and RetroArch and RetroBat and so on. If you do want me to make a video on one of those using to do a similar system, then please do let me know in the comments down below. And if there's enough interest, then of course I'll make some extra videos. But for now, we're going to use Launchbox itself. So this is a really nice application. It does have a paid version which gives you access to something called Big Box, which is the full screen sort of take over your computer type of version of launcher. But again, the free version will do everything that we want it to do very nicely for us. So head across to the launchbox-app.com website, and on the download page there, you'll find there is a version for Windows. So this is a Windows only application. So if you are using a Mac or Linux, then obviously we need to use something else instead. And again, just let me know and we can obviously do that. But if you go across the download page, to get the download, you simply enter in your email address and they will email you out a download link. So once you get that, download the installation file onto your computer. So once you have the application setup file downloaded, we can just double click on that to launch it. Now, Launchbox does do a lot of updating to its system, so the file you download may not be recognised initially by Windows, but we can of course just go into more info here and run that anyway. And again, providing that you have downloaded from the official website, then everything will be fine. Don't use downloads from other places. So we just need to select our language, then just accept the agreement. We then are going to specify where you're going to put it. Now, I would put this Launchbox folder, so it's going to create a folder called Launchbox, and we're going to build everything inside that folder. So I would advise putting that onto the root of one of your drives. So I'm going to put that onto the root of my drive D here. So it's going to create a folder called Launchbox on drive D, and that's where we're going to build our whole system. So I'm going to select Next for that. And then it's just going to, of course, set a menu folder and so on. So we've got everything ready and we can just now install. So once the installation is finished, Launchbox should start up and we should be on a screen similar to this then. So really what Launchbox is doing here is prompting you to start adding in your games so that it can then launch those for you. So you can see at the moment it's talking about it. It will have scanned your computer and it will have sort of found any of the games that you have set up from sort of like things like Steam and so on. And it does allow you then to launch all of those from inside itself as well. And you can see it's now prompting us over here to sort of start importing other games. But we're not going to do that for now. We're going to do everything sort of as we go through the project. So just close that down and we're pretty much now ready to start adding in our emulators. So this really is the starting point for both sides of this project, so both the computing one we're doing today or the consoles. So once you're here, we just need to close down Launchbox itself, and we can now start to download and install our emulators. So we're going to start by installing a DOS emulator, and this will let us, of course, play MS-DOS games. Now, the main emulation system for this is DOSBox or DOSBox X, but we're going to use something called ExoDOS, which is really a system which packages up DOSBox and just makes the whole setup and running these games just so much easier. So if you head over to this website here, so the retroexo.com and their ExoDOS section, you'll come to this page. And again, in here, it takes you through what this project is about and how it works. And basically, it has got a number of versions of DOSBox all set up just so that we can actually play all of the games. One of the problems with DOSBox is you have to start sort of messing around with settings to get games to run reliably and well within it. But this does all the work for you. And one of the great things as well is that not only does this allow you to download the games directly in the emulator, so you don't have to go off and find the games, but it also integrates directly into Launchbox, so we're not going to have to go through a whole lengthy process of setting things up. Now we have two versions that you can download here. One is the full release version, and that will come down as the emulation with all of the games pre-downloaded. Now, of course, that is a very big download here at 638 gigabytes, but we're going to install today the light version. So that is a 5 gigabyte download, and what that does, that installs all the emulators and the setup, all of the database of what games are available, but doesn't actually download the games until you want to play them. So each time you want to play a game, you will have to tell it to download it. So there'll be a couple of minutes as that gets downloaded and set up, but then you will be able to go off and play the game directly. And again, as I say, that's all done within the system. All of the downloading is done within the system, so you don't need to go off and actually find these files. And that just allows you then to concentrate and play the games that you want to, rather than, of course, having sort of half of your hard disk taken up with just a whole load of DOS games that you don't know about. There is also a media add-on pack. Again, if you want to download that, you can. And that's got lots of sort of associated things, as you can see here, sort of books, soundtracks, TV shows, and so on. So I'm not going to bother with that today. So we're going to download this light version here and then install that. So the file that you download from the ExoDOS website is actually what's known as a torrent file. And this is a file which, in effect, connects you to other servers to download the actual installation files. So to be able to use this file, you need to have a BitTorrent application installed. So the one that I tend to use is this QBitTorrent, which you can get from this web address here. So you simply need to go through and install that onto your computer. And once that's installed, you should then find, if I come across back to here, that the torrent file that you have downloaded from ExoDOS, if we double click on that, that should then open up in my BitTorrent application. So QBitTorrent is now showing us what was referenced inside this ExoDOS torrent file. So over here we can see the actual files and folders that it's going to download. So it's going to download a folder called ExoDOS, and inside that there's going to be all of this information here. So that is the actual setup for this program. So we're going to download that onto our computer. It's saying over here where do you want to download it. So I'm going to put it onto drive D as well. If I come across here, I can select my drive D again, and I can select that. So we're going to have on drive D, it's going to download an ExoDOS folder, and that will have everything inside it that we need to get this all set up. Now, one of the good things about ExoDOS is that, I think I did mention, that it is integrated with Launchbox. So it is going to actually download a version of Launchbox for us and install itself into that. Now, what we're going to do, because we have already got Launchbox set up, then we're going to copy ExoDOS out of its version of Launchbox into our original version of Launchbox. Now, the reason I'm doing that is so that I can show you how to go through that integration process. So if you already have got a whole range of emulators set up, then of course we don't want to install over the top of it. So we'll use this to integrate ExoDOS together. But if you haven't yet set up Launchbox, then obviously this would be a great way of installing it all in one go and having ExoDOS all installed for you. But again, I'm going to go through the process of integration here just so that we can see how to do that. So once we've told our BitTorrent that we want to download everything and where we want to put it, we can just say OK to that. And what's happening now, you'll see down here that our ExoDOS is now queued up for downloading. And what's really happening here is that our computer is contacting other servers which have got copies of these files, and they will then allow you to download the files directly from them. And as you can see, there are a number of sort of seeds and peers listed in this system. So they all are able to provide the files for us. And you can see that we're going to be downloading this sort of 6 gigabytes of data in only a couple of minutes. And that is the true power of this BitTorrent and this sort of peer-to-peer file sharing, that we can get really fast downloads by simply sharing the load across a number of different computers. So let's let that come down and then we can start installing ExoDOS. So once that's downloaded, if we go into our ExoDOS folder, you'll see the files that have been downloaded. And one of those is a setup batch file. So if we double click on that, that should bring up a command window. And you can see in here, it's just asking you about how you want to install that. So again, you can combine various projects. There's a number of projects in this ExoDOS system. But again, we're just going to set up this one part of it. So we want to use the C key to continue. And again, it's now going to start asking you. So say the add-on pack, which we said we weren't going to download. Again, we can just skip over that. It's now going to start setting things up. And again, there's 3 steps in this, and it can take a few minutes to run through. So just follow the prompts as you go along, and that will actually install ExoDOS. So once that's all installed, you should have in your ExoDOS folder a full setup. And that, again, is a full Launchbox setup with ExoDOS integrated into it. So we want to actually then move our ExoDOS installation out of this Launchbox version into our original setup for Launchbox. Now there is a helpful manual to help you do that. So if you head across to the ExoDOS website, where the downloads were, there is a link off to a manual. So if you go on that, you'll find a PDF file comes down. And one of the sections in that is how to import into an existing setup. And it really is as simple as moving a few folders across. So you can see we have a list of folders here that we need to move. So inside our data folder, we need to copy across the platforms and playlists. So if I come out to here, so in my ExoDOS system, in data, we've got our platforms and playlists. And in so I want to highlight both of those. I'm going to cut them out of here. I'm going to cross to my main Launchbox installation into data. You can see the folders are still there, so I'm going to paste them in here so they will then integrate with what's already there. So I'm going to paste them in here. That's okay. So now I go back to my manual. In my manuals, music, images, and videos folders, I should find an MS-DOS section, and that needs to be copied across. So let's get those across here. So I'll go back to my ExoDOS. So back to my ExoDOS system here. So we should find we have our images. So there should be an MS-DOS section here. So that needs to go inside our Launchbox folder. So this is our Launchbox folder inside images. You'll see there's no MS-DOS section. So we need to cut that out of there and paste it into my images folder. I'm going to paste that in there. Then back over here, we want to go to our videos, and we want to go to our MS-DOS section, and we want to cut that out of there. Back over to our Launchbox installation, we're in Launchbox, into videos, and paste it in here. And then let's check in our manual again, just to where we need, what else we need to do. So it was manuals and music are the 2 ones which we need to do as well. So let's come out to here. Now, if I go back into my ExoDOS system here, so music and manuals. So I don't think I have those. So those would have been installed if we had have downloaded that media pack. So if you have the media pack downloaded, then your manuals and music, you'll find them in here, and they just need to be copied across into our Launchbox as well. So we now have in our main Launchbox folder, we should have all of the supporting files installed in there. So if we go back to ExoDOS, the very last thing we need to do is this Exo folder. That needs to be cut out of here. I'm going to cut that out of there. And then in my Launchbox, so in the root of my Launchbox, I'm going to now paste it in here. And that will copy across the main system. So that should be everything set up now. So our ExoDOS folder, which we have, this is our installation of ExoDOS. I can actually get rid of that folder now. So if I come out of here, ExoDOS, we can actually just delete that. Because again, we've now copied everything into our Launchbox folder, and that should now be ready to run. So booting up Launchbox, you might find it takes a little bit of time when it first boots up after installing the ExoDOS system. Because obviously it's now basically imported 7,500 games, and it's now sort of indexing all of those together with their sort of box art and so on. So you should see all the box art sort of appearing up in your display here. Now we should find over on the side, you have a section of computers and MS-DOS. If you can't see this, and initially, if you go to your Tools menu, Manage Platforms, you should see MS-DOS sitting up in there. If you then close that, you should find that it re-indexes itself, and you should then find this appearing. So this is where we now will have all of our MS-DOS games listed. And again, you can see them all in there. So at the moment, we have installed ExoDOS. All of these games are available for us to play, but they have not yet been downloaded. So if we want to play a game, so let's find a game here. So if I search inside here, so let's have a look for Doom. So you can see we have a number of bits of Doom here. So where's the actual game itself? So we have Doom itself here. So again, if you highlight it, just a single click, you should find over on the side, we've already downloaded a lot of the sort of the media and the box art and all that type of stuff. So you can have a look through and see what the game is about. It should have information about the game. So all of the metadata is in here. So we already have populated everything to do with our games. And all we need to do is to install it. So if I click on the install button here, that will pop up a window for us. So again, this is now ExoDOS saying that we have not yet installed this game. So would you like it to go off and download the game for us? And of course, yes, we would. So it appears you have not downloaded it yet. It's just telling you how big a download is going to be. And would you like to download it? And yes, we would. So what it's doing now, it's actually going off on its own BitTorrent link, and it's going to go and try and find some servers that can give us those files to install Doom. So again, we don't have to go and find the game or download the game or install it. It's going to do everything for us. You just need to give it a little bit of time for it to connect to these other computers and download the game files. So that took it a couple of minutes to find and download that game. So we should be able to now get that all set up. So it's now extracting the files and installing the game. And it's now asking us if we want to change any of our settings. So we don't want to change anything at the moment. So would you like to change any of these? So no, we don't. And we don't want to change any graphics filters. And that now is Doom installed. So it should now start it up. And there we are into Doom. So at the moment that is running in a window on my computer. And again, this is actually Doom starting up here. So we're actually in the game itself. And of course, it's asking us to select our sound cards and so on. So if I press 2 to select a Sound Blaster card, we're now into the actual game. And again, we've got the full sound working. And this is where ExoDOS really comes into its own, in that it does have a lot of configuration files all pre-made for us and different versions of DOSBox depending on what system we're trying to emulate. And that just makes sure that all of these DOS games will reliably run as best as they can do inside our emulators. Now obviously we're in windowed mode at the moment. We can just press Alt plus Enter to get us over into full screen mode. So again, we are running DOSBox here, so all of the controls that would work for DOSBox will work with this system now. So that's our DOS system all set up and ready to run. So moving on to some other home computers. Now, a lot of systems will use a package called RetroArch to basically download a multi-emulator system, and that will sort of cover a whole load of different computers. But I tend to find that RetroArch, the emulation cores inside that they do work, but they try to treat the whole home computer more as a console than a home computer itself. So I find that sort of the standalone emulators tend to work a bit better, especially when we need a little bit of fine-tuning on setting up for each individual game. So I recently made a video on Amiga emulation, and for that I used the Amiga Forever emulation system, which is based on WinUAU. So that will just show us a sort of general purpose emulator that we can hook into our Launchbox setup and then get that all set up so we can actually list our games and get to our games more easily. So let's have a play with that one. So Launchbox is already aware of all the different computers and consoles that we might want to emulate. So to get it to set this up, we just need to tell it that we're going to play an Amiga game, but then tell it that we want to use our Amiga Forever emulator. So let's come into our tools and we're going to import some ROM files for a single platform. So we're into the ROM import wizard here. We want to go on next for that. Then we need to go off and find the actual game files. So I have already downloaded a number of game files, and they are in my retro folder under Amiga, which is in here somewhere, Amiga. And I've got some WHD load files. So let's come down here and let's start with, let's load Uridium in. So let's come down here and Uridium 2, let's select that. So we've got one game there. Let's come off and we'll find another one. So let's come up and let's go for Turrican 2. So come down here to the TUs, TU Turrican number 2. So let's go for Turrican 2 here. So we have two Amiga games that we want to load in. So let's go next. So it's now asking us what platform they are. So sometimes it will automatically detect that, sometimes it won't. So we know that these are Commodore Amiga platforms games. Let's come in here. It's now asking us to tell it what emulator it wants to use for these games. So it's hinting at RetroArch here, but of course we want to manually configure our own emulator. So it does have a whole range of emulators. Well, not yet. Actually, we haven't loaded any emulators in because we're starting from scratch, aren't we? So we want to add our emulator in. It's saying you really want to use RetroArch for this or one of these other ones, but we don't actually. So let's go in here and let's say that we are going to use the Amiga Forever emulator. We now need to tell it where that emulator is. So it does have to be installed on your computer already. If we come off here, if we go to my drive C and into program files and into Cloanto, Amiga Forever, and there we have the executable file sitting there. So we're building up its knowledge of how to run this emulator. So by default, what Launchbox will do, it will create a command which will run the emulator executable and then pass the full file name for the game that we want to run as a parameter on that command line. And we have this sort of default command line here. Now I happen to know that Amiga Forever is set up to operate like that. You will find that some emulators don't. Sometimes you will need to put some sort of tell it a bit more about the file and so on. Sometimes it will totally ignore this path, and at that point it will just start up the emulator by itself, and at that point you just have to work the emulator as if you just started it from on your computer as normal. But at least Launchbox will have launched it for you. So this is all set up, ready for Amiga Forever. So let's just click on the OK for that. So we've now created our emulator. We go on to next. It's asking us then what we want to do with our ROM files. So I have my ROM files already logged in my Amiga repository. So I'm just going to use the files in their current location. You can, if you want, get it to move the files. So take them out of where they are and put them inside your Launchbox folder. So if you were loading these games via USB drive or something, you would do that, or you can copy them across. But for me, I've already got them on my hard drive, so I'm just going to use the files where they currently are. Metadata then is all of the information about the game, including sort of images and so on. So we want to get hold of that. The images, again, I want to get hold of any images that we can possibly get for it. And then Emu Movies, we're not going to use that for this, but if you have an account with Emu Movies, you can download little video clips for some of the games. But we're just going to leave that for now. And then any special options here, really just leave that at the default settings. So it's now got hold of our two games. It's actually identified what the games are, so Turrican 2 and Uridium 2. So it should now be able to import those and get some game art for them. You can see it's downloading it. It's downloading the actual game art now. So hopefully we should have a Commodore Amiga pop up in our computers list over here. And if I select that, we should now have our game art, our box art and all here. So again, it doesn't seem to have got the correct one then for Turrican. Let's see if it's got any other art for that. For Turrican, it's obviously managed to download some game screens and so on, but not the actual box art. So for Uridium then, it has downloaded our box art and our stuff. So let's have a look and see if we can get Uridium or Turrican 2 to actually work here. So if I double click on that, or there's obviously a play button over here, if I double click on it, that should then launch Amiga Forever and try and play this game. Let's see what it's done. So I have not set this game up in Amiga Forever. So this is the screen that you would get in Amiga Forever, just asking you how you want to set up your Amiga to play this game. And this is one of the really good things about using what I would call the proper emulators for these particular platforms. So with the Amiga especially, and quite a few other ones as well, it doesn't always run using the same computer. So there are lots of different models of Amiga. So unlike something like the ZX Spectrum, where there's only sort of one model in effect, and we do need to have a little bit of setup before we actually get the game to work. So I'm just going to let it use its default settings here. And that should now get Amiga Forever all set up, and it should now launch our game. So there we have it, starting to boot up the emulator and loading in that WHD load file. And then that should eventually then drop us into the actual game itself. And there we have Turrican 2 starting up. And we should be able to, again, we're now into Amiga Forever, the proper sort of emulator. So if I hold down the escape key, that lets me then attach my gamepad and my joystick in so that we can actually play it now with my game controller. So let's jump into a game. And there we have, and again, I can now just play my game as normal and use my game controller to control my character inside my Commodore Amiga. And even if I can't actually play the game very well. So let's come out of this. So again, if I hold down to get out of these games, again, you will have to work with the emulator itself. So for this particular emulator, if I hold down the escape key, that brings me up my menu, and I can then press the exit button, and that should then drop me back into Launchbox. So while we're here, let's see if we can fix this missing image. So if I right click on that game, and if I go into the edit and edit the media and metadata function. If I come down here to the media section, I can download some media. So this is going to go back off again and see if we can download media. So you can see here, the numbers at the back tell you what it's found. So let's just download all of that and see if we can get that to actually then work for us. Let's OK that. Let's come out here, and there it's now just managed to get hold of the box art, and you can see it's giving us better sort of information over here as well. So that's our Amiga now all up and running. And as I say, I've used that as an example of using a general purpose standalone emulator, and you can see that by importing a game for the system, then telling it to use a different emulator, we can then use the emulators that we prefer to use rather than always relying on RetroArch to get us some really good home computer emulation. So really all that's left to do now is to install your favorite home computer emulators and then just connect them up just as we've done to our Launchbox system. So I've gone off here, I'm using the Commodore 64 Forever package from Quanto, which is based on the Vice emulator, but again sort of wraps it up in a nice, neat system. So I'm using that then for my Commodore 64. And for my ZX Spectrum emulator here, I'm using Spectaculator. That's one that I did do a video on a while back. And that's, again, my favorite emulator for using the ZX Spectrum. But again, all of those worked exactly the same idea here, where I imported my games, I added in my new emulator and told Launchbox where the emulator executable file was. And then it was able then to bring in my games, add all the artwork, create these nice sections for me so I can just browse my various games, and then of course launch the emulators with the game that I have chosen. And again, as I drop into a game, I'm looking at my Spectaculator one here, so it drops me into Spectaculator, but it has actually attached the game file. So all I simply need to do now is to run my ZX Spectrum as if I were sat at my actual keyboard and load in the game, and that of course starts up the tape recorder and loads in the game itself. So again, this does give me then my best emulation of these home computers, which again are a bit more awkward to emulate than sort of like the general consoles. And of course, RetroArch does, well, at least I think RetroArch does struggle sometimes to get proper emulation and allow you access to all the different features, especially if you want to start using keyboards and things like that. So that is how we would set up our ultimate home computer emulation system. So I'm going to go off and install a few more bits and pieces in here and add some more games, and then we will have a full, in effect, my dream home computer emulator system running in Launchbox. So I hope you've found this video useful. Please do click that like button and subscribe to the channel. Obviously, I will be doing a second part of this video where we'll be looking at then setting up all of the actual consoles side of things. And then I probably will do a final one at the end where we'll actually look at what I ended up with, so you can see what sort of things we can manage and how Launchbox and Big Box as well can help you just make a completely seamless system which gives you easy access to all of your home computer emulation and your console emulation all in one nice package. So I look forward to seeing you again in these next videos. I say please do click that like button and subscribe, and I will see you soon. So have fun and bye for now. For more games programming, electronics projects and retro gaming, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit my website.